G'day everybody, thanks for stopping by. We're opening another package from EcoFlow, and this one is the River 2. Okay, good morning and welcome to today's video and the flies. Today's video is going to be a look at the new EcoFlow River 2. Now if you remember on the channel we did the EcoFlow River, and we've also looked at the Blue Eddy EB3, E3B, whatever it was. Anyway, if you want to go and have a look at each of those videos, you can go and have a look at the links up in the corner. We will get around to doing a comparison between all of these when I get a little bit more time. This is their lowest capacity unit in their solar generators, they call them, power stations, basically power storage units. I just wanted to show you a situation which I think is the ideal use case scenario for one of these units. Now there are a lot of players in this market. I think you know the usual brands. EcoFlow and Blue Eddy are ones that stand out. Jackery is one that's been around for a long time. EcoFlow and Blue Eddy certainly seem to be trading blows, and there's new people to the market, etc. If you're looking at known brands, in my mind, this is one of the brands that you should be looking at. Checking them out, seeing what's on offer, you know, putting it somewhere on your list as ones to have a look at. I'm not saying you necessarily need to buy one of these. That's not the purpose of the channel. The purpose of the channel is just to show you stuff, give you some information, and then you can go and make your own decision. So, with that in mind, this was sent out to me for the purpose of review, for free. When I pull this out of the box compared to the original River, which is, I guess, the entry level, the smaller size, 260 odd watt hours worth of capacity, 20 something odd amp hours worth of battery. So relatively small. These aren't going to be powering your car, they're not going to be powering your house. These are for this. So small little units, taken out portable. If you're a drone flyer or you're into your RC, one of these is ideal. So at the moment I'm using the Siggy socket, so that's for 12 volt output. That's charging the two batteries that you can see here. One of the USB-A plugs plugged in here, just ran out of cords basically. That's charging up the remote control. Also got the USB-C on the power delivery port, which is up to 60 watts, 65 watts, and that's just charging up the tablet over here. Could also get another cable out the back of the car and be charging the drone all at the same time and have literally everything going. Most of these things are pretty well topped up, so we're only pulling about 15 watts out of these. It's a super light, compact little unit, much lighter than the original. This is the lightest one I've had my hands on in this capacity. That being said, I haven't had my hands on a heap, so don't take that as gospel. The new generation, which is the LFP battery. What that means for you is that the LFP chemistry is a safer chemistry. Look, not that many of us have any issues. A lot of us are carrying around tablets and phones and all that sort of stuff that have the older lithium battery chemistry in it. We certainly know what happened with Samsung in the past and have had some issues there. But generally as a rule, you've got one of these sitting beside your bed and charging and doing its thing anyway. So really not a big issue. The benefit really comes with the LiFePO chemistry, LiFePO 4, is that they tend to last longer. The LiFePO 4 chemistry, in addition to being so much lighter, this unit can actually be charged 3,000 times before you start running into that same issue. So 500 times versus 3,000 times. Now that's assuming that all the electricity that's in here continues to work and function as it should. I can't tell you whether that's going to happen or not. Not much in the box to look at, but I think you can see how light this is compared to the other one. Now I have to go and grab the other one so we can just do a weight comparison. I'll put up the details there on the screen as far as weights go. The initial reaction to this is just, yeah, this is just so much lighter compared to the other one. This, I want to say, this is what the original River should have been. I think they've made some good improvements. I'm not sure about the design. I still like the design of the other one. With this one is they've really simplified the front of this. I think they've made some really good changes to the other one in that just the face looks cleaner. The whole overall unit just looks cleaner in general. I did like the techie look of the other one compared to this one. Doesn't need to look that fancy as much as we like that sort of stuff. They've still got the power ports on the back as far as input. I like that. The Blue Eddies have the inputs, everything on the front, and I've got to say I didn't like that. Old River had them on the side. I just like that separation between the units. I would have liked to have seen a cover on the front of this because that's not something I'm going to use, so it's probably going to get dust and crap in there. So I would have liked to send a little rubber cover. I think you can probably buy those off eBay, or I can 3D print something, just stick it in there. Occasionally find that I find unique use case scenarios for these where I go, oh yeah, I need to do this. I'll just go and grab the little River 2 and then use that. For example, the other day I didn't have a power cord and I wanted to run my 3D printer. So I was actually running the 3D printer directly off this, and then when this started running the power, I just plugged this in and then have the 3D printer running from this, and that was perfect. So it worked as an intermediary, it was still charging this up, worked as an extension cord, and I could still track the power and stuff that the 3D printer was using. So that was interesting. This is my 3D printer. This is a FL Sun Q5 Delta printer that you can see here. Decided I'm going to pull it out and start making some stuff for one of the fish tanks that we've got over there. So working on that. You can see the pile of other gear and whatever here. So because the power is all the way over beside that fish tank and I haven't yet run a power cable all around the back, I thought, you know what, I'll grab out the little River 2, we'll plug it into that, and I'm out of curiosity, I get to see what the 3D printer is going to use, and I can do some 3D prints in the meantime. So whilst running, you can see there, fluctuates, dropping as low as about 30, 38, and up around about the 100, there you go, 122. And about 2 to 3 hours worth of usage. Again, this is just for shits and giggles, just to show you something that you can use it for. I like the fact that they've gone to one port on the front. Ultimately, this is a small unit. Whilst it has a 300 watt inverter built in, I don't think the inverter side of things is something that you're going to use too regularly. It's going to be a fallback position. You're going to use a UPS function, something along those lines, rather than using that as a regular thing. Just ultimately because anything that you want to run off 240, it's just going to put too much of a load on it. It's just not going to last real long. Handy and convenient when you're in an emergency, but this is not something you're just plugging in and just letting run 24/7. It just doesn't have the capacity in it. Good for running your camp fridges, but you're probably going to get somewhere around 6 to 7 hours or something out of this. You're probably not going to be using this to take camping to run a fridge. It just doesn't quite have the size. You'd be looking at the next one up, which I think is the EcoFlow RIVER Max 2, which is double the capacity of this one. So that would be what you would need if you want to run a camp fridge overnight. This just isn't doing that. Despite the ability to charge this up in the back of the car or do solar the next day, just doesn't quite have the capacity to get your fridge overnight. What else is in the box? We've got our power socket for the 240, so plugging that into the 240 to charge that up. This is what I really like about the EcoFlow stuff, is that they include your power cords as part of the kit. So with some other units, like the Blue Weddies for example, if you wanted the car charger, you need to go and spend 20 bucks, I think it is, thereabouts, to go and buy one of these. With your EcoFlows, they include the cords in with your kit. And look, that's just brilliant. At the end of the day, that is what should happen. It shouldn't be an exception to the rule. And with that in mind, well done EcoFlow for providing the cords with the actual product. One thing that I have found with this is that it is noisy when on charge. This little fan on the back is very noisy when this gets charged. It's only a small fan, but I have seen a video, and if I can find it, I'll link it down in the description, where old mate has a YouTube video where he has taken the cover off this and replaced that with a computer Noctua fan. They like to pump the power into these. There's like this competing race where they're competing with each other to see who can charge their units the fastest. Now this one will charge in under an hour, or basically an hour, from 0 to 100. And if it's at 50%, I can have this ready to go in 30 minutes to pick it up and walk out the door. This one is currently sitting at 30%, so we're just going to plug this in just to give you an idea of the noise when it's on charge. And I just want to show you how many watts this thing will take from the 240 there as well. So straight away you can see that goes up to around about that 340, 350 watts. And you can see from 30%, it's going to take around about 40 minutes. You can see here on the display, it's going to take about 40 minutes to get this bad boy charged. So at this stage, I'm going to assume that you haven't seen the other reviews and you don't know anything about the EcoFlow. This is the display, which is exactly the same as the display in the River 1. This is your time here. So if we're charging or whether we're discharging this unit, this is going to show you how long whatever that current process has to go before it reaches either 100% or 0%. So if we're charging it up like we are now, we're inputting 340 odd watts. It's at 32% of our battery capacity, and it's going to take us about 39 minutes for this to reach 100%. I'm just going to bring in the old unit so you can, I guess, compare sizes. This unit's much, I wouldn't say much smaller, but it's considerably lighter than this one. It seems smaller. I'm not sure whether it's just because it doesn't have this handle on the top that it makes it seem smaller, just the form factor, but realistically it is about the same size if you just take this handle off here. This is what I'm talking about. I would have liked to have seen one of these plugs on our 12 volt Siggy socket here. Had two USB-A ports, a fast charge USB, which people are complaining that the new one doesn't have, and then a USB 100 watt output. Over here you've got two USB-As, so I guess your legacy outputs, which I think are around about the 3 amps, so you're going to get about 12 to 15 watts out of each of these. And this is a USB-C, which I believe is 60 watts, not the 400 that this is meant to be over here. So this should charge at 100 watts, but because we've only got a maximum of 60 out here, I want to see whether we're actually going to get the 60. You can see 56 watts there. I'm going to call that close enough to 60, the old one. So let's see. 66, 80, 94, 96. I'm calling that 100 watts. So while they've gone from the 100 watts output on the USB-C or the power delivery port from the old one to the new one, I don't know. You can connect to this one via Bluetooth or via Wi-Fi, and it will use the same app as the original, so that's real handy. Again, kind of a set and forget affair. Once you go in, change your settings, you don't really have cause to go in it anymore. We don't have the 5521 ports on the front, the barrel connections. Again, don't think anybody's going to miss those. But where our sockets are on the back of the new one, on the old one, they were on the side with a little cover. I don't mind the little cover, and we've also lost our reset button here as well. I've only got the kettle for the obligatory X-Boost testing. So 1850 to 2200 watts. I'm interested to see whether this will work. Supposedly the original unit would run up to 1800 watts, which allowed it to power this kettle. Supposedly the X-Boost on this one only takes it from the 300 watt standard up to 600 watts. So I'm interested to see whether she's going to run this kettle, because that was the one thing I really liked about this, the implementation of the X-Boost, which was similar to something that the Bluetti had. They called it something different, but the implementation on the EcoFlows I think is better than the Bluetti variants. See if that still applies on the new River 2. So turn our AC on, and we'll just see what happens. Alright, straight away I've heard a click, and that has turned off. I don't think it's going to do it. Alright, so it took a little while for it to come back on. No. Okay, let's double check to make sure that we've got X-Boost on, and I believe we do. I'll just show you again on the original River that does actually work. X-Boost is on. We'll go into the River 1. X-Boost is on. So point in case, kettle's now charged into the River 1. Turn the AC on. There you go. We'll turn that kettle on. So it did spike up around about 1700 watts, and then it's brought it back, like we said in the original testing, to 600 watts. So it's currently supplying 600 watts to the kettle, despite it being an 1800 watt odd kettle. That's working. It's going to take a little while because it's only getting a third of the power, but it is working. And that's what I really liked about the original River. This new one, disappointingly, doesn't do it. I wasn't going to worry about doing that testing actually, because I thought, well, it's an improved unit, it's only going to be better than the old one. So a little bit disappointing there. I mean, that was one of the things that I really liked about this unit. So I'm just going to try and charge the older River from the new River 2. I'm running into something interesting. I can hear the relay click, so I'm not sure what we're doing here. Keep cycling up to around about the 300 watts and then just cutting out. It keeps cycling on, it hits the 300 watt limit and then just cuts out. Bang, there it goes. And I can hear the power in the other unit clicking on and off and on and off. It shouldn't be having any issues going over that 300 watts. Should be going up to 600 according to the X-Boost, because it is on. So I'm not sure what's going on there. I did try and figure out why it doesn't want to go over that 300 watts. Alright, so the input's going up. Bang, as soon as it gets to that 300 watts, just cuts out. Okay, so we just stumbled into something interesting, and what I want to show you is that we currently have the 240 volt plugged into the River 2 here, the newbie, going into the back of our older River here. So we're actually outputting 295 odd watts. So we're outputting from this one and we're inputting into this one, so charging at 270 watts. I want to show you something interesting though. This is the app here for the River 2. So just to show you, going into the River 2, currently outputting 296 odd watts. As you can see, it lines up with this over here. So that's interesting. You'll notice that X-Boost is off. And we shouldn't need it because we're under our 300 watts. But I want to show you what happens when I turn this on. So whilst it's running, I can turn on X-Boost, nothing happens. I'll turn off our power here. Goes down to 0. X-Boost is on. 0 output over here. 0 input. If we try and turn this on for a load that is under 300 watts, watch what it's been doing. Starts to go up. It'll spike over 300 watts and cut out. There you go. Cuts out. Goes into overload. Turns on. Goes again. And you'll see each time it's spiking up over that 300 watts, going to something like 319 and cutting out. Now that's with X-Boost on. If we go back over here to our settings, turn off X-Boost. You've seen that, spike to 327 watts, comes back down under 300 and just keeps running. So I don't know what's going on there. I'm going to send this through to EcoFlow and just quiz them about it and say, this doesn't seem right. It should be able to handle that spike over 300 watts with X-Boost on and even continue to run over that 300 watts. I don't understand why that EcoBoost being on is affecting it. And you can see that we can turn X-Boost off and have the unit to continue to run under the 300 watts, that's fine. But again, if we turn that X-Boost on, it continues to run, but if I cycle it off and on, that's when the X-Boost has an issue. Not sure what's going on there. 4 ways to charge. So obviously we can plug it into the AC, you can plug it into the car, you can have solar, or we can charge it via USB-C. So for the test of multiple charging inputs at the one time, it's a no-go. So we've got it plugged into 240. It's currently taking 335 rather than the 345 that we were saying before. I've got it plugged into the SIGGI socket over here, which is plugged into the back, the XTC 60 connector, and it's not taking an input from that at all. We disconnect it from the 240. Okay, and as soon as we take it away from the 240, it starts taking an input from the 12 volt socket. And you can hear that fan. This is plugged into the 12 volt socket. That fan now is going harder than it was when it was plugged into 240. So that's the, I want to give you a listen to this. So that's the fan going, been plugged into the cigarette lighter socket, right? Plugged into 240 now. I don't know, does it sound just as angry? It's on 240. You can hear that. I'm going to unplug it. We're going to go from 240 to 12 volt. Wait for it. Here it comes. That seems louder. Listen to that. It seems to get louder on the 240. It seems to get louder on the 12 volt input, on the car input. 8 amps at 12 volts, so 100 watts versus 340, 350 odd watts. What's going on there, EcoFlow? I'm charging this up. I've got it usually sitting in another room somewhere, plugged in 240. Or it's going to be charging in the car. It's going to be sitting over the back. That fan's not going to bother me at all. Just going to try that again. And it switched from 100 watts on the Ziggy socket, and it's going back to the USB-C. So the USB-C overrides the car input via the XT60, but your 240 volt overrides everything, which makes sense. But I would have thought regardless of the input, it would have just had a preference for whatever the higher wattage was, but not the case. It does work as an EPS, but I actually think it works as a UPS. I think this actually switches over quick enough, and there has been some tests. Go and have a look at Hobotech. He did some testing on this, and this was switching quick enough to be considered a UPS. So if you've got a laptop or a computer or something plugged in via this to your 240 volt cuts out. This switches at less than 30 milliseconds, which means that it switches quick enough to maintain the power to whatever it is you're running, and that will just continue to go. And then obviously if your 240 volt comes back on, that'll just continue to then throughput your 240 through to your device. I believe the larger one, the Max, switches slower than this one, and then wasn't able to be used as a UPS, but this one can. So there's a 5-year warranty on this. I didn't realise that, so that's interesting. Another thing that EcoFlow does better than the Bluetti, in my opinion, is that their solar input is better. The Bluettis tend to have a weird input power slash amp limits on their solar inputs, and quite often what I find with that is you can never quite get the right balance of panels, whether series or parallel, to actually hit that maximum. I think these are better rated than those. So the solar input on this is up to 30 volts. So we might be able to do two 12 volt panels in series depending on what the sun load is. More likely we're going to put 2 of those in parallel, but then we're going to run into an 8 amp limit, which is what we did with the other one. So nothing's changed there as far as charge rates. Before we've got a little bit of sun, I've just gone and grabbed the 110 watt EcoFlow solar panel, which is still, I've got to say, my favourite solar panel that I've received thus far. I still like the all powers, but I've got to tell you, this panel was just so efficient when I was doing testing with the original Eco River. This is a 110 watt panel. Now I think this has a maximum of around about 100 watts in, so this is going to be a perfect match. But I just want to plug in the two 200 watt all power panels, just to see what it does if we over panel it, because sometimes that's not a bad thing to do. So currently it's sitting on 0%, so it's going to take a full charge. One thing I realised with the River 2 is that it doesn't come with the XT60 to MC4 cable that you would get if you bought the solar panel and the combination, or alternatively you could make up one of those on your own, or just buy the cable direct from them. So currently we're seeing 63 watts, that's just with it laying flat. I might just stand it up, so that's probably a bit closer to being directed to the sun. 87, 88 watts, just varying slightly. And that is why I love these panels. I think I might have even seen 100 out of this, out of a 110 watt rated panel, which is just exceptional. So 110 watt panel, or this 110 watt panel, not directly overhead sun, you can have it filled in about 3 hours. So again, just for shits and giggles, we're going to throw out 400 watts and see what it does with it. It's capped to 110 watts maximum. input from 11 volts to 30 volts with a maximum of 8 amps. So we're going to go over that with our 2 panels in parallel, but we'll set them up. We'll just see what it does. We've got these set in parallel, which means we'll be inside that 30 volt range, no problems. Let's find out. Alright, nice. So it's charging, and nicely, hopefully you can see there, it's gone straight to 110 watts. It's maxing out those panels. Now when I say maxing out, it is taking the most it can take out of those 2 panels and just losing the rest. So you can over panel it, so if you've got a 200 watt panel or something like that, throw it on, because if you've got overcast or not ideal conditions, you're more likely to get over that 110 watts with a 200 watt panel, and it's going to just take the rest and just lose it, but you'll be getting your maximum solar charge into the little River 2. The 110 watt panel is a good match for this, because you can pretty much almost get that 110 watts out of the 110 watt panel, which is not real common with some of your solar stuff, but that one's nice and efficient. Great looking panel, all the above. The only issue I had was with that stand, but you can go back and have a look at that review if you want to. I think I'm going to find that I'm going to use this more than I did the original, mainly because of the weight. It's just that much more portable, it's just that much more handy. Similar to the other one, this one is going to replace the other one now to just living in the back of that Pajero. It's a full-time thing, just being plugged in and then just being constantly on charge, ready to go. So there you go, that's the little River 2 from EcoFlow. I think you know that I quite like the EcoFlow products. Really love their solar panels. Their solar panels are the nicest things, and I got to tell you, I don't mind it. What I like about it, again, love the form factor, love the weight, like the fact that the inputs are on the back, not all jammed in the front. I think it's good that they've only got the 1240 volt on the front. There's no point having multiples in a unit this small. Play is excellent, and the fact that they supply the cables with the unit as well. I mean, that's a big one for me, which realistically should happen, but they do it. Bluetooth versus just the Wi-Fi. I used to have I had a few issues with the original one with the Wi-Fi. Being able to log in via Bluetooth, etc. Just makes this that much more makes it that much more quicker, more convenient, and just generally easier to interact with via the app. Things that I would like to see a little bit different, cons if you will. I'm disappointed in the X-Boost functionality of this one, but only in relation to how it was done in the original. I'd like to see a cover on the front here. I don't know why they've capped that to the 8 amps. I'm okay with the input from the car socket being limited to 8 amps, but I'd still like to see that being as 10, because there might be somebody out there that's got a cigarette lighter socket charger for, it's not going to be for a phone, for something that's pulling 120 watts and need that 10 amps, means they're not going to be able to use it on this. But again, plenty to run a fridge. Your fridge is only drawing 4 to 6 amps, so you can do that, again, only for a short period. To see this USB-C power delivery port be 100 watts like it was on the original. Fan is a little bit noisy, so that's a bit of a bugbear, and we don't have any contactless charging on the top. Now that they've flattened this out and we've got rid of that silly handle, it probably would have been nice to see them have contactless charging on top. Seems to be getting fairly regular these days, and now that I've got a phone that does it, would have been nice to have that on top. All of those things that I've just mentioned as cons, none of those are deal breakers for me. One thing that people might see as a bit of a downfall is it's not modular anymore like the original. You can't add the additional battery. That's the EcoFlow River 2 sent out to me for the purpose of review from EcoFlow. Thanks EcoFlow. Nice to get hands on one of these products again, and I think you're heading in the right direction. Again, this is what the original probably should have been. So because they're making the improvements, you can see they're heading in the right direction. So thanks very much for stopping by. If you've got any questions, put them down below. I'll do my best to answer them. And in the meantime, I'll catch you on the next one. Cheers.